Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Africa. Good morning, the world. It's another wonderful day, the Thursday, 15th day of April 2021, and you're welcome to The Conversation, showing on your digital first Pan-African news network. I am Merciful Ajinomo.
And my name is Ade Suwelsi. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the show this morning. Good morning, Merciful.
Good morning. Looking smart as always.
Thank you very much. How are you doing, though?
Good, good. And you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we bring you the quote of the day. After that, we go straight into development across Africa. There's Mark Twain there with a motivational quote. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. What do you think about this?
Well, once you get started, the other part is easy. So basically, getting started is the hardest part. Once you just start to leap forward, and then the ideas keep coming and you just keep doing it. That's
so the key phrase is just start.
Just start, exactly.
Just start. All right, we'll move straight into development across Africa, beginning from the very first story in Nigeria here, where the ex-military governor of Ondo and Oyo, Colonel Ahmed Usman, has died at age 70. Former military governor in Ondo and Oyo, Colonel Ahmed Usman, died at age 70. Interior's news gathered that the former military administrator passed away yesterday night in Jos Plateau State, and preparation is going on to bring his remains to his country home in Okura, Dekina, Kogi State. Ahmed Usman was born in 1951. He served as second in command, 192 Battalion, Abak, and 141 Battalion, Kano, from 1983 to 1985, United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon from 1985 to 1986, and Battalion Commander G Amphibious, Elele, Port Harcourt, 1990 to 1991. He was appointed governor of Ondo State in September 1994, and in August 1996, Usman was redeployed to Oyo State by the Sani Abacha-led junta.
That's quite a profile, quite a background.
Yeah.
Yes, and then still in Nigeria, Aisha Bashir Ali has become the first female chief judge in Nasarawa State. And this is coming shortly after her confirmation by the Nigeria Judicial Council and screening by the State House of Assembly. Shortly after administering the oath of office on the new Chief Justice, Governor Abdullahi Sule said his administration takes the judiciary as a critical institution and will continue to provide requisite support to strengthen the relationships among organs of government in the state. He added that his administration will continue to support the judiciary towards quick dispensation of justice, stressing that the government has approved the increase of subvention of the judiciary as well as enhanced allowances of magistrates and judges of area courts.
Yeah, a very good story here.
Exactly.
I must say. I just kept smiling throughout the story. You know, we're looking forward to a time where there's a balance across all sectors in government. You know,
exactly.
See women doing big things. They already started.
Of course.
So we just want, some sort of quality and
where we have as much women as we have, men in across all sectors.
Definitely. All right, the next story there is BUA Sugar Refinery will offer 15,000 jobs to Nigerians. That's coming from Abdul Rashid, the senior general manager overseeing the construction of sugar plant owned by BUA Group. Abdul Rashid Olayiwola has said the refinery will offer direct 5,000 jobs and 10,000 indirect jobs to Nigerians after completion. He disclosed this on Tuesday at the factory site in Lafiaji, Kwara State. According to him, the chairman of BUA Group, Abdul Samad Rabiu, has made available every facility, including a 3-mile private airstrip capable of receiving wide-bodied aircraft, to making the inauguration date come to reality. Abdul Rashid, who said that the sugar refinery is sitting on a 20,000 hectares of land space that has been segmented into functional departments, including the sugar plantation, housing estate, health center and school, and a vast irrigation scheme designed to provide water where it is needed, added that sugar refinery is not like any other in the country. It disclosed that the BUA plant is a 4-in-1 entity that has incorporated in it a sugar mill, an ethanol production unit, the refinery, and a power plant of 35 megawatts power generation capacity.
I mean, I like to see it. We keep talking about ways to reduce the high number of unemployment rate
keep
that we
getting
have in the
jobs.
country. So
Yeah.
this is one of the ways. Put people in there, let them work. And as much as you're reducing the number of unemployment rates we have in the country, you're also manufacturing. So
Yeah,
hoping that
so to an extent is working on the economy as well.
Exactly, working on the economy as well. And I'm hoping we'll produce enough to also export to other countries. So we're also, it's like a circle. Reduce unemployment rate, working on the economy, growth of the economy, and also looking towards exporting.
15,000 is actually a good number,
it's a
step
number.
by
It's
step.
a big number, yes, exactly, and grateful for that one. All right, this one is quite a sad one actually. So 7 years today, Chibok girls. The Chibok abduction has been 7 years today, and then some of the girls are yet to be released. And in light of that, we have parents of these girls crying out. I think it was yesterday we read out that the parents said they want to see their children before they die. So, and then like the Beatles, Boko Haram stormed Government Girls Secondary School GGSS Chibok on April 14, 2014, not with a new pop of music, but with a new pop of sorrow, wailing and gnashing of teeth when they forced 276 girls, I beg your pardon, out of which more than 100 have been released into a truck and moved towards the Sambisa forest. As today marks the 7th year that the students have departed incognito from their families, the parents of the yet to be released 112 girls again have expressed their desires to see their words, expressing the tale as something better ahead than experience. But Lama Jonah, whose 18-year-old daughter, Amina, was among the abducted Chibok girls, said it is a tragedy for the parents to die without seeing their children. According to him, 17 parents had died since the incident and many others were sick. Quite sad.
It's actually a tragedy according to Bulama Jonah, for children, for parents to die without seeing the children. They've not seen them for years.
For 7 years.
With the hopes, the prayers, the faith that look, one day they'll see their children and the time comes, they all return back and the parents are normal. I think it's a very sad one. And that's 7 years.
7 years.
7 years is actually a big number.
Yeah.
For 112 girls.
I mean, you don't know what's happening with them. You don't know whether they're alive or dead. And I think one thing, if I was a parent, one fear I would have is, I hope the government doesn't actually forget and say, look, let's just forget about it. I hope, processes that keep going on to actually secure their release and all of that stuff. And that's one fear I'm going to have. And I know that Bring Back Our Girls movement has been ongoing. People are still talking about it. So, and I'm quite, certain that they're not going to forget that these girls are still in custody.
Yeah, and someday they'll return back to their families.
Yeah, someday we're going to actually see them.
Definitely.
United with your families.
Yeah.
All right, that's so much you can take on this segment of the conversation. We'll be going on a break now, but that will be to bring you COVID-19 updates from across Africa. Do stay with us. It's that time of the conversation where I continue to tell you, as I've always said, that we need to beat COVID in 2021 and not take it to 20. I think I'm just going to let Merciful do it today. What do you think about this?
All right, so this is what Adiswa always says every day. It is a time that we beat COVID in 2021. We cannot afford Africa or Nigeria to have a third wave of the virus. So you have to ensure that you wash your hands, you ensure that you're socially distanced from your neighbor.
That's right.
And if the vaccine is close to you, go ahead and take the vaccination. Do you understand? It's very important. According to what Adeswa always says, please take this thing seriously. Prevention is better than cure. Did I do well?
Yeah, you killed it. You nailed it.
All right, thank you.
But on a serious note, we need to beat COVID in 2021. We can't take COVID to 2022. We cannot even afford a third wave, like Merciful did say. So you need to do your part so that you and me and the next person can be safe from COVID-19. All right, having said that, we're going to go on a break now. When we come back, we'll be taking you through newspaper headlines for this morning.
US TV Network mobile app is now available. You can now catch up on our breaking news, stream our programs live. Watch out for the latest update on sports and politics as they unfold. You can also get notifications for our upcoming programs and events. All these on our TOS TV Network mobile app, available on Apple Store and Google Play Store. TOS TV News from Africa by Africans.
Being a journalist means in-depth analysis that unravels hidden truths, that question the status quo and fact-checks government.
These criminal elements hiding under the cloak of surveillance contractors are the APC elements.
Do you have facts to prove that? Being a journalist means waking up every day with a burning desire for peace, equity, and justice for all citizens.
We're being told that the choice you have is to take the lesser of two evils.
It means patriotism via the prism of objectivity and accountability. It means giving my platform to the masses to discuss issues that matter to them.
Some of them, if they bring budget and the budget they look, some they sleep, they're going to ask how much you are on. I have it.
Thereby shaping government policies and laws. My name is Osasu Igbenedion, and I am the People's Journalist.
Welcome back to the conversation showing on your digital first Pan-African News Network. And it's that time where we'll bring you some major headlines from some major national dailies of Nigeria for this morning. We begin with The Punch from the very top. Forex crisis putting investment jobs at risk, says LCCI. And that particular story can be found on page 17. And we have three stories underneath that. The first is Senate alleges 7.6 billion naira secret withdrawal summons Ahmed AG. That can be found on page 18. And the federal government fortifies security at Abuja, Lagos, other airports. That can be found on page 17. And Osinbajo criticizes vaccine politics, exports ban on developing countries. That particular story can be found on page 26 of The Punch. And we go over to the very obvious headline there is State face cash crunch, salaries swallow revenues, federal government seeks more funds. And we have three riders underneath that story. The first one is, we need more money for debt servicing, day-to-day running of government admits federal government. And the second, Ekiti spends 93% of allocation on workers, receives 3.1 billion naira on the average, says state. And the last headline underneath that story is, we can't continue spending 90% of our revenue on civil servant pensioners, coming from Gombe State. And underneath the picture of the day there, the first story there is, I'm hopeful Chibok schoolgirls, others will return, coming from Governor Zulum, and that can be found on page 9 of The Punch. And the side by side of that story is 3 Osun principals suspended over pro-Dudua's group visit to schools. That can be found on page 7. Lagos expects 261-day rainfall in 2021, coming from the Lagos State government. And just underneath that, we have three riders, the last stories for The Punch. Jusun strike, courts remain shut. National Assembly plans talks with government. Governors, that can be found on page 26 of The Punch. And 2 killed, 2 injured as trailers collide on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. That can be found on page 4. And the very last headline for the Punch this morning is, federal government approves 14.5 billion naira operational vehicles, boats, for customs. That can be found on page 17 of The Punch.
Moving away from The Punch newspaper to The Guardian newspaper, starting from the very gaping headline there, avoid reckless money printing to fund deficits, experts warn. Then 3 riders under the story. The first one says, it is untrue we printed 60 billion naira. Federal government replies Obaseki, seek alternative funding option as country risk falling into hyperinflation. And then the last one, Senate summons Minister AGF over 7.5 billion naira secret withdrawal. And then just beside the picture of the day, red flags over AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson deal. Johnson & Johnson deal new blow to vaccination drive. Then the riders under that one, US, South Africa, Denmark halt campaign. Exercise go on as NPHCDA vaccinates 1.4 million Nigerians. Benefits of COVID-19 vaccines outweigh risk, experts insist. And then just underneath the picture of the day, Reps, speakers beg governors to grant financial autonomy to the judiciary and legislature. That news is on page 3. 19 die in Gombe communal clash. That's news on page 5. And then Wimbiz, others fault composition of newly constituted governing councils of federal universities. That's on page 27. And then the last headline on the Guardian newspaper this morning. Over 20 Chibok parents died awaiting their girls. Says, bring back our girls. And that news is also on page 5 of the Guardian newspaper.
All right, we'll move quickly to the Nigerian Tribune. Begin from the very top as always. Buhari APC's misrule caused Twitter to choose Ghana over Nigeria. Coming from PDP, Buhari APC's misrule caused Twitter to choose Ghana over Nigeria. That particular controversial and interesting story at the same time can be found on page 25 of the Nigerian Tribune. And 60 billion naira note printed to support match allocation. Federal government replies Obaseki. We move over to the stories not only the Nigerian Tribune head out here. And the first is Makinde Akeredolu mourn as ex-Milad Ahmed Usman dies at 70. That can be found on page 2. Affair advocates lifetime tenure for Supreme Court justices. That can be found on page number 8 of the Nigerian Tribune. And then JAMB lost over 10 million naira to fraudsters in 2020, coming from the JAMB registrar. And the very obvious headline there says, there are plots to incite war in Southeast, coming from Umahi. And then some stories just beside the picture of the day. 154,225 patients have recovered from COVID-19 in Nigeria, coming from the NCDC. And over 1.2 million children yet to be immunized in Nigeria, coming from UNICEF. Police storm forest in search of kidnapped women in Oyo. And Jusun vows to sustain strike until 36 states comply with financial autonomy. That can be found on page 25. And just the last story is underneath the picture of the day there is, I will embarrass you if you don't return government vehicles, Akeredolu tells ex-deputy. And we have right underneath there that's saying 2 vehicles with me as statutory benefit, coming from Agbola. That can be found on page 25. The last headline here says Delta, Edo, Bayelsa Rivers, Lagos, Oyo top Edo 2020 medals table. That can be found on page 31. All of the stories can be found on the Nigerian Tribune newspaper for this morning.
Moving straight to the Nigerian News Direct, starting from the very top. Obaseki's comment on printing 60 billion naira to share in March on true and sad. That's coming from the federal government. Lagos, Ebonyi, Niger residents pay highest for petrol in March. That's coming from the NDS. Lawan, Sanwo-Olu, 24 others bag NIS Fellowship Award. And then just to the very gaping headline on the Nigerian News Direct, local content, federal government to sanction violators of expatriate quota rules. That's coming from Aregbeshola. And then underneath the picture of the day, NAFDAC intercepts truck conveying banned unwholesome medicines and vaccines in Asaba. Economic growth, AGF E3 advocates proficient management of government funds. On page 2, you can find that story. And then the last headline there says, over 5.4 trillion naira debt. AMCON 6 National Assembly passage of BOFIA 2020. These stories are the headlines or inside the Nigerian News Direct. Just get yourself a copy if you want to read up on all of that.
All right, we'll move over to the very last national daily for this morning. That is the Vanguard. Beginning from the very top, Okorocha spends second night with EFCC operatives, speaks on alleged 7.9 billion naira cash. That can be found on page 4. Nigeria reaches 1.02 million persons with first dose of COVID-19 vaccine. That's coming from NPHCDA, and that can be found on page 2. I'm talking about debt burden. LCCI calls for National Asset Register. And talking about the very gaping headline there on the Vanguard newspaper, 60 billion naira printed for March allocation. Obaseki lied, coming from the federal government, and that can be found on page 4. We have some riders underneath that, and the first is issue raised by Edo Governor, sad, not a fact, coming from the finance minister, and adds, not true, we printed money to share at FAAC, says Nigeria's debt at sustainable level. And the last right under that story is allocation shortages, usually augmented from equalization fund, coming from the finance ministry official. And just under the picture of the day, mayhem in Gombe as Boko Haram wreaks havoc in Borno State. And the details of that can be found on page 5. 7 years after Zulum says Chibok girls will be recovered, over 20 parents have died from waiting, coming from the BBOG, and that can be found on page 12. And talking about the 2021 UTME, email address no longer required at point of registration, says the JAMB registrar. And then BUA refinery set for groundbreaking this year. That story can be found on page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating to actually see that a lot of Nigerians are actually taking the COVID-19 vaccine. I was skeptical that would actually have, numbers turn up for
1.02
but
million.
That's quite a number.
It is actually.
Yeah, and I do know that it's going to grow. So it's basically what I always say: get vaccinated so that we can beat COVID-19 in 2021. All right, that's the newspaper headline on the conversation this morning. We're going to go on a break now. When we come back, I'll be taking you through what's trending on social media. Welcome back. It's still the conversation on TOS Television Network, and it's about that time where I bring you my favorite segment of the conversation. That's where I get to bring you what is trending on social media. Talking about social media, you have to follow TOS TV Network on social media. That's TOS TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, TOS TV Network. And also, you can stream the conversation on www.tostvnetwork.com. Now bringing you back into what's trending on social media, and JJ Omojowa has been trending on social media. So what happened is that he started trending on Twitter after he was accused by economist Obi Ezekwesili of forging her signature and making her a director in his company. The whole saga started when Omojowa categorically stated that Mrs. Ezekwesili was promised to be made a minister in the current Buhari administration, but that didn't happen. And so there's been a back and forth with that one. I'm going to read out a few tweets to that regard. The first one is from JJ Omojowa himself, and then he says, "Pastor at Obizex," that's Obi Ezekwesili, "you served me legal notice publicly, so I was left with no choice but to serve you publicly too. P.S. I won't react to the unwanted provocation from you, your sons and allies. You betrayed my loyalty, service, and respect to you for reasons I don't understand." And then the next tweet is from El Comandante. He says, "From Omojowa's letter, it's clear he got Obi's consent. Omojowa won't be so daft to have forged Obi's signature to register his business just because of their relationship. I think Obi is just trying to be dramatic as usual. This doesn't exonerate Omojowa from SAB scandal." And then in response, of course, Omojowa got her consent. Even if he did not, the lack of empathy that made Madame shoot this kind of shots in public, despite their relationship, must be legendary. And then the next tweet is from @Ishaka. "Nigerians, please don't allow Omojowa, Pastor at Obizex, aka Mama IPOB, at Sam Amadi, and at Aisha Yusufu and their rented urchins distract us. Al-Assad is the main cocoa. Who collected and shared the dollars, and who are the grantees?" And then the last one is from @UD_Adams. "It's unbelievable. This issue has gone too far. I wish there is going to be mutual understanding between Obizex and Omojowa to sheath their sword. Nigerian youth looks up to you, and recent developments are damaging to us. Please, please, and please." So I'm not quite, fully abreast of what's happening here, because we just saw this person says, "Oh, you forged my signature," and this person says, "Look, I got your consent." And then because of, if you're on Twitter and you're following these two people, you know that they have some kind of relationship. So for them to have come to the public and say, "This is what's happening," we don't know what happened in the background. We don't know what's going on. So we're just going to keep following up on the story to see what's happening, and then be sure that I will bring it to you when we have the full gist, and then when it starts trending again. All right, that's too much that we can take on, the social media segment of the conversation. We're going to go on a break now, what I like to call the most important break of all. And when we come back, we'll be taking you through the big story.
Welcome back to the conversation showing on your digital first Pan-African news network, 2S Television. Don't forget you can always be a part of it by following us across all our social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course watch our programs live on our website www.tostvnetwork.com, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. It's that time we'll bring you the crux of the conversation, that is the big story. And this morning we'll be talking about Nigeria's education sector. Nigeria's education system, the deplorable state of education in the country, and the way forward. The Nigerian education system has been on a downward spiral for more than a decade. Currently, there are some 10.3 million out-of-school children, despite the government making primary education free in almost all states of the Federation. Now, the quality of education in public schools became so bad that most Nigerian parents are left with no choice than to cope with the exorbitant fees demanded by private schools, leaving the public schools for those who can't afford private schools. Currently, a combination of ill-equipped facilities, insecurity, continuous industrial actions by teachers' association unions has been the bane of Nigeria's citadel of learning, and despite government efforts, it only seems to grow worse. What then is the hope of ordinary Nigerians who cannot afford to take their words to private schools? Now, joining us to talk about this and more is Oluwabukonola Williams, and she is the Executive Director of Education as a Vaccine and Amalala Fund Education Champion. You're welcome to the show, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning, Bukola. Are you there?
Good morning. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. First of all, let's get straight into it. 10.3 million out-of-school children. How did we get to this point in Nigeria?
Well, we got to this point for very many reasons. One, a lack of investment in education. Even as you mentioned, that we have the Universal Basic Education Act, which made education free. But even if education was free, there was still, as we call them, hidden fees that parents were often still required to pay, either for uniforms, for books, for sports, and different things like that. And some parents could still not afford it. And there was even some money that was being paid for the upkeep of schools, because schools oftentimes are not getting enough funds to be able to ensure that there was protection and security in their schools, or fences, or fixing classrooms. And so we see a lot of these issues. And at the same time, we also had a lot of parents who felt that schools were not safe enough for their children as well, especially for girls. We were also seeing girls being forced to drop out of school because of early marriage. So we've just seen so many different factors, as I've mentioned, the financial, the social, and all of these things that have come together to just really, really have an adverse impact on the education system in Nigeria.
Okay, talking about that, you did mention that. I know that go forward, the Sustainable Development Goals is quality education, and the government of this day has been doing quite a number to ensure that we meet up, to standard. We meet up with quality education before 2030, making basic education compulsory, free, and all of that stuff. But the education sector in Nigeria is constantly deteriorating despite all of that. What are we not doing right?
Sorry, I can't hear her.
Can you hear me
I couldn't
now?
hear you. Okay, I can hear you. There's a background echo.
Okay. So what I was saying was that I do know that the government of this day has been doing quite a number to meet up, with goal 4 of the Sustainable Development Goal, that's quality education, making education free, making basic education important and compulsory. But we still keep having the deteriorating state of the educational sector in Nigeria. What are we not doing right, in your opinion?
So if I got your question right, you're saying, what are we not doing right?
Yes.
Okay. Quite a few things. I already mentioned some of them. But the other thing I'm also going to mention is also the quality of teachers as well. Right, and remuneration for teachers as well. So we're seeing a lot of issues in which teachers are not being remunerated in a way that keeps them happy at their job and ensure that they can deliver on the quality of education. We've also seen that states as well, state governments, even though they had access to funds and they were supposed to provide half to be able to access the universal basic education funds, a lot of states were not accessing those funds. And, you know, for a lot of states, they just want access to the funds. And the issue is that those funds are actually supposed to be catalytic, which is to support an increase in funding at the state level and not just providing those funds directly. And very few states, depending on what year you're looking at, have been able to match the commitment of the federal government to be able to ensure that monies are going to the schools and to the education system in their states as well. And we also have to be, you know, honest with ourselves that we also see a reduction in the number of girls who go through the schools. When we were even getting closer to achieving gender parity, we've seen the impact of COVID on that. We've seen the impact of social norms on that as well. And so we're not ensuring that there's enough girls in school, and even if they finish primary school, for them to transition to secondary school as well. And one of the things I would be honest to say is that for me that's really frustrating is that we're not seeing the political will and the commitment to ensuring that we have a strong education system. And that's the most important thing. If we do not have political will, if we do not see commitment from our leaders, from our elected leaders, to be able to ensure that we have a strong education system, to be able to ensure that we're investing at higher rates instead of just putting only a small percentage of, of finances into the education system, then we're going to continue to have these issues.
Okay.
Some of the issues that you've mentioned, they're quite valid, but still currently we have the issue of insecurity, internet strikes. How do we get past this, to correct that access to education as a country?
So the truth of the matter is that the issue of insecurity is not new. Yesterday was the 7th year anniversary of the Chibok girls being kidnapped.
Yes.
And about 100 of them have still not come back home, and their parents are still waiting for them to come back home. So the issue of insecurity is not new in our schools. Even when you go to communities, through Malala Fund, we're supporting and working with some communities to be able to improve access to education in their communities and be able to ensure girls can go back to school. And one of the things they keep bringing up, especially, at the community level, is that one, there's not enough classrooms. Some of the schools do not have security guards, do not have fences, so just anyone can walk into the schools. They don't have enough teachers teaching all of the subjects. And so they are seeing all of these issues and are calling on the federal government. And where possible, these communities are also ensuring that they get teachers to come volunteer from the community to teach the students. So, all of these really critical issues keep coming up. It's not that they're new. The issue is that, Nigeria, even after the whole issue of insecurity, created the Safe Schools Declaration that was signed and launched with a lot of fanfare and commitments that were made. But where are we in terms of those commitments right now? We're not seeing it. When the conversation is being had about security, the onus of security is being placed either on the schools themselves or on parents or on students. But the issue is that security needs to be handled by the government. It is their responsibility, it is their role, and they've made commitments. They need to fulfill those commitments.
Okay, we've largely been talking about, public education in Nigeria, but not ignoring the fact that we still have words who attend private schools in Nigeria, and it is believed that the educational system in that, in that sector, in that part, is way better than having, going to a public school. How do we now bridge the gap between the quality of education we have in the public schools and that we have in the private schools? How do we balance things out?
The truth of the matter is that we have to think about who's been affected by this. To have access to a private school, you need to have funds to be able to pay for the private school.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just show up on a private school. But with public school, that's really how we're going to reach scale if you have 10 million children out of school and you look at how many of them are living in poverty, how many of them have parents who don't make enough to be able to send them to school, to even be able to pay for uniforms, to pay for books, to pay for shoes, private education is not going to solve that problem. It's not going to address that problem at all. And so that's why it's critical for us to ensure that the public system works. Because that's how we're going to ensure nobody has to, be required to have money to be able to get an education. Education is a human right. Everyone should have access to basic education. That's why the Universal Basic Education Act, exists. And even for many of us, we're actually pushing, right? Because based on research, it's not just about primary education. We want to see kids get free education up onto secondary school. So they're able to attain basic literacy. They're able to gain the skills for them to be able to invest in their lives and to be able to make informed decisions about their health. Okay. We know what the importance of education is. And so, we might talk about private education and it's there and it's available for those who have the funds or who can make the money to be able to do it. But the truth of the matter is that we cannot ignore the public education system because that's where the bulk of our population is going to be able to get literate.
Okay, but you spoke earlier about one of the issues we have, quality of teachers that we have in these public schools. But I don't know that colleges of education churn out graduates year in, year out. So where is the problem? Where are we having, the lapses, the deficit in the quality of teachers that we have?
So there's quite a few things, and I think, if you talk to a teacher, there's many things that come up. The remuneration issue. It's a really big problem. Are they getting paid enough to be able to, for all of the education that they put in and for the needs that they have and for those who are raising their own families as well, are they getting paid enough to be able to continue the work? You talk to some teachers and they're having to teach hundreds of kids in a classroom, and sometimes the classroom, there's no access to proper ventilation, there's not enough desks and chairs. Do the children have access to books? Have they eaten that day to be able to focus on what is being taught? Do they have access to, to trainings to be able to, because just because you graduate from College of Education, you still need to continue to be trained. Right, and to grow your skills and to ensure that you're teaching kids based on the needs that we have for the 21st century, and those very many things. And so, if the environment for them to be good teachers makes it difficult for them to do their job, then many of them are going to either leave, find either alternatives, and we're not going to have enough. And we also, in parts of Northern Nigeria, don't even have enough female teachers as well that would be representative for girls to have to look up to as well, and to feel that, we're seeing gender parity and gender equality in schools as well, and we're not seeing enough of that.
What role does homeschooling play in all of this?
Sorry?
What role does homeschooling play in all of this?
I think, of course, the home always plays an important role, and it's always great for parents before the children go to school to instill values in them, to ensure that there's a joy of learning and reading, and a stable home environment also plays a really critical role in terms of ensuring that children can learn. But the truth of the matter is that, as they say, it takes a village, right?
Yes.
To raise the children. So everyone has a critical role. There's the role of the home, there's the role of the schools, there's the role of the government, there's the role of the neighbors and the community, there's the role of the traditional leaders who maintain and ensure the continuation of social norms, which sometimes needs to change. So the truth of the matter is that, yes, homeschooling, so a lot of parents have found it as an option, especially during COVID, where a lot of children couldn't get access to distant learning, or could not get access to radios, or did not get the education and teaching materials that supposedly were being given to students to be able to continue learning in the home. And even for, encouraging parents to say that, when chores are being done, to ensure both boys and girls are doing the chores, because from a research that Malala Fund did in Kaduna State, we found that a lot of girls, even though they wanted to continue learning, the domestic chores increased. During COVID, and it affected them being able to actually continue to learn, and could affect the fact that they would get a chance to go back to school. So, homeschooling can play a role, and it can be a decision, and it can be a choice. But the truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, how many parents are able to stay at home and to be able to be the one educating their children, right? A lot of parents have to go to work. We have a lot of daily paid persons in Nigeria who, are not able to stay at home and be able to teach their children. So schools are really critical and really important and really need to be safe spaces, especially for children who don't have a very stable and structured home life.
Yeah, so let's talk about public schools. Some people are of the opinion that Nigeria as a country, we have some states of the federation who, have free education for students, but we still keep seeing children on the street, not going to school and everything. Are these schools really free, or is there a problem that we're not seeing yet?
Okay, so I'm going to bring up another issue that I had mentioned, and this has come up in some of the communities that we were working in Kaduna, because Kaduna is one of the few states that has a free education policy that children are able to attend schools for free from primary to secondary education. It first started out that free education for girls, but now it's for both girls and boys. And so the question is, if there's a free education policy, why aren't they going to school? And when you ask parents, there's a couple of issues that come up. One is that there's still some fees, and we call them hidden fees, right? In which that even though schooling is free, there's still some other small little fees that are being charged by the school to continue either maintenance, to be able to provide some administrative costs, to be able to ensure that, they provide uniforms, to be able to ensure they provide sportswear, all of those things. And some parents actually still don't have the money to be able to do it, depending on, if they have access to a job or if they have access to income, the size of their family. So those little hidden fees, no matter how free education is, they're still not able to access it. And then if the family also wants the child to actually start bringing in money, so they send them hawking, they take them to the farm. Sometimes these kids drop out because of planting season. We also see the issue of lack of sanitation facilities for girls. So when girls start to get their period, you also see a high rate of dropping out as well, because there's no access to water, there's no access to toilets where they can get some privacy to be able to change their pads. Sometimes we don't have access to sanitary materials as well during that period. We also see a lot of parents who feel that once a girl gets her period or is grown enough that, it's time to marry her off. And so we're seeing dropout. We also see the issue of lack of safety as well. So for a lot of parents, the nearest school to them requires kids to walk a really long distance. And a lot of parents feel really, really worried about letting their kids walk that far to school and walk back. Anything could happen, or even feeling like schools, might not be safe because of the issues of the kidnapping. So all of these things really affect the fact that we still see a lot of kids who are not in school.
Thank you so much, Olapo Kola, for joining us on the show this morning. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you guys for joining us on the conversation this morning. It was such an insightful one, and I hope you had fun, you enjoyed the conversation. Don't forget you can be a part of the conversation and the TOS TV community by following us across all social media platforms, TOS TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also check out our YouTube channel. And then just look at the videos, subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. Also check out our website at www.tostvnetwork.com. My name is Adesuwa Osui.
And I am Merciful Ajinamo. Thank you for watching. Have an amazing day.